do you think it's conceptual on that definition?
What's his definition?
Just that which is entirely like a type of mental content which is constituted by concepts entirely.
Well, I mean, what the thing that is confused here, I think, is the definition of what a concept. Like, what's your account of concept, or what's McDowell's account of concept?
What's the definition of concepts?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have like any sort of joint necessary and sufficient conditions for that.
All right. Well, I mean, just going off of my assumptions about what it might mean, I would say that there are conceptions.
Okay, how do you construe preferences as conceptual items?
Yeah, so I would say that they're concepts in the sense that they're state of affairs occurring in a mind.
State of affairs occurring in a mind.
Yeah, which to me seems to be a concept.
So you don't actually think that there are such things as non-conceptual mental content? You don't think those sorts of things exist? Any state of affairs that occurs in the mind is, in fact, conceptual?
Yeah, I wouldn't hold it there a non-conceptual mental state.
It's kind of a radical view, no? Like most
philosophers, but I don't think there
are non-conceptual mental content.
No, I mean I wouldn't hold it up. Yeah, I'm not even sure if it's most philosophers. I'd probably wager it is. I'd probably assume it's something like 70% or so. But I don't know. Maybe if you've got the Phil paper study, it might be different. But I don't know. Yeah, I'd probably say that I'm like fine with it being a minority view among philosophers, regardless of the number.
Yeah, it's a large majority. Okay, Fleur said it in the comments. Conceptual states are mental states that require concepts, not constituted entirely by concepts. Okay, cool. But McDowell holds an externalist account. I assume that you're internalist about concepts then.
Sorry, say again. I got caught up reading Fleur's message in the pop-out chat. My bad. She's saying it's 50-50 in the literature is what she's saying. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Huh,
Yeah,
so
that's all the questions that I had left. But I'm gonna drop back down and listen. Are you about to debate Apollo right now?
I hope so.
What are you guys gonna debate?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, good luck. I'm gonna drop back down and listen.
Peace.
Yeah. So there might be a little delay there because Apollo says he has to go pray, about 10 minutes or so. He has to go do
He's
that.
on his 10th prayer of the day.
Jesus.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we could just get somebody new to serve as a little intermediate section.
Does anyone want to come up and give a halftime show? Saucy, do you want to come up and ask some questions or something?
Saucy. Bring Saucy.
We can get Yotam or Saucy. Or them both, actually.
What's good, Saucy? What do you want to debate about?
Oh, what's up? I just want to know if Sinthe thinks that NTT is successful.
It depends what you mean by successful there.
Yeah, so you don't think there's
Is it effective? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so you think there's or you don't think there's a trade?
Well, I don't think there is a trade. But maybe you got one.
Yeah. So I think the trade would be something like highest ordered use. And all I mean by that is that, the way chickens are going to be most useful to promote the flourishing of persons, if the way they're going to be most useful is to be like chicken parm, then it's morally permissible to kill them for food.
Yeah, so that obviously wouldn't justify most instances of animal suffering, because most instances are not they're not the most used. They're not utility maximized.
No, but I think it justifies pretty much all instances of factory farming.
Yeah, you think that, and I just told you why it doesn't.
Yeah, well, presumably, right, if charities that are donating to kids in Africa, and not even presumably they are purchasing meat from factory farms, and this is saving millions of kids from being malnourished and dying, then
that's not
it seems that factory farming does increase the flourishing of human beings, right? You would agree with that.
Well, I would disagree with that, actually. No, I don't think that's what the nonprofits I'm familiar with that are actually effective are doing. They're not buying meat from factory farms, because that's wildly expensive. It would be a really bad strategy. The thing they ought to be doing, if they're providing food to kids in Africa, is they ought to be giving them a vegan or at least vegetarian diet if they want to make it as effective as possible. And the most effective charities, the ones that you should be donating to, not the ones that are wastes of time doing stupid side projects like fucking food, are the ones that are doing things like malaria nets. Those are the good. If you care about African children, you should go for the malaria net one. And if you had a non-profit that was in Africa and you wanted it to be effective and it was food delivery, right? If you had to be food delivery for some reason, you certainly wouldn't want it to be a non-vegan diet because it's wildly expensive. Plus the shipping costs, Jesus.
You think that meat from factory farms, and I'm not talking about the kind of meat you would buy from the store. I'm talking about the meat that you would purchase in bulk directly from the farms, right? You think that's more expensive than shipping vegan food?
If you're shipping that, yeah, of course it is.
Someone's gotta stop Doom. I mean,
But I don't think the alternative is
like
to
literally every single. I mean, there aren't really sources, but like if you were just to look into this for like 5 minutes, you would see that it's
oh, there are no sources, but you've looked into it for 5 minutes. You know a lot about nonprofits now.
Oh, yeah, I do know a lot about nonprofits. Yeah.
Okay, could you tell me what the difference between a 501c3 and a 501c4 is?
No, I have absolutely no idea.
Okay, you know no idea. You have no idea how nonprofits work. Don't ever say.
No, I know it. No. I know
like,
what nonprofits.
there's no source, but you totally think there's no source.
Nonprofits work, right? I said I know what these nonprofits do.
Okay, what's the nonprofit that you're thinking of?
Yeah, and to be clear, it's not just nonprofits; it's also charities. But we could just look at something like the Compassion International or Save the Children. Like these are two good examples of charities that donate to kids in Africa, and they would purchase the food, and they also do other things. They like build houses and shit. But the food they purchase to give to these kids comes from factory farms.
Yeah, so you think it's the cheapest possible option? They've chosen to use factory farms instead of using like beans, for example. Why is it cheaper?
Oh, not instead of just using beans. If you want to meet like some full nutrient profile, because these kids are malnourished, right?
Yeah, so you need beans and rice for a full macro profile. And if you care about vitamins, the cheapest way to do that is for a vitamin supplement.
I didn't say full macro. No, macros are.
You said nutrient. Well, no, macros are not different from nutrients. Macros are a type of nutrient.
Well, not different. They're a type. But they don't meet your full nutrient profile. Like you agree, you can hit your macros.
I gave you macros too. Yeah, that's why I gave you macros and micros.
Oh, you just said macros. It's a little blunder.
No, I didn't. I said the way you can get your macros is from beans and rice alone. Yeah, we'll bet on it. So the way you can get macros, don't you owe me money from a previous bet or something? So
never talked to you before.
Pretty sure we have. Pretty sure you might be the same guy. But look, we can.
You're a little bit confused.
Yeah, I think you're definitely the same guy, and you owe me money. So look, here's the thing that I said, and I'll remind you, and you can just like listen back to the recording, you'll hear it. I said if you want to get all your macros, you can get it from beans and rice, and for your micros, you can get it from vitamin supplement. That's what I said. Go listen back.
You didn't say that. You didn't say anything about vitamins.
I did. Listen back.
You think that vitamin supplements, along with purchasing beans and rice, would be less expensive than purchasing factory farm meat?
Yes, obviously. What the fuck? Yes, of course.
That's the most confused thing ever. Mineral supplements are significantly more expensive.
No, they're not.
They definitely are.
No, that's genuinely insane. Can you provide a source?
I mean, you're the one that made the claim. I would expect you to provide a source.
You just said my claim is insane and deeply confused. Do you have a source? Just yes or no?
Oh yeah, I said your claim is insane, right? I didn't say
Do you have a source, yes or no?
Just go ahead and provide the source.
Answer my question.
Are we getting a source or are we getting a dodge?
Well, I think we're getting a dodge is what it looks like. So yes or no to my question?
No, I do think we're getting a dodge. I think Sinthe is dodging the question for a source. I do think that is what's happening.
This is a terrible Goons impersonation. You're not him. So just answer my question.
A terrible Goons impersonation.
I'll give you a source if you just answer my question and say you don't have one.
That was very rhetorical. I'm glad you said that. That was very, very nice.
What are you doing? Are you just like crashing and burning on purpose?
Yes, I'm crashing and burning. Do you have a source so I can crash and burn while reading the source?
Now you're asking me the question that I asked you. That's crazy. So look, answer my question eventually, and then I'll get. Look, if you just say no, I'll give you my source. Deal?
Oh yeah, no, I don't have one. Give me yours.
Okay, yeah, I got you. So look, the source is Walmart.com. You stupid fuck. Go open up Walmart.com and look at the price.
Oh my gosh, there's absolutely no way there's more on. There's absolutely no way.
So let's do it together. Let's do it together. We'll do the comparison.
You are so incredibly stupid.
We'll do the comparison right now. What's your?
Did you hear when I said?
What is, in your opinion, the most effective and cost-efficient way that you can provide? That would be resale. Yeah, that would be. You could get. Well, hold on. You understand the distinction is up in bulk and resale.
Do you think that
you can have a? They sell bulk. They sell in bulk.
I'm aware they sell bulk. Do you think they purchase it before?
So you were talking.
Do you think they create the bulk they sell?
They do in fact purchase it from farms and create some of it themselves. They do both.
Wait, so you think Walmart has their own farms where they produce meat?
Yes.
Do you have any source that would suggest that with Walmart? And I'm not talking about farms.
Yes, they label it.
No. I'm not talking about.
Look, you are not well versed on this topic at all. This is so sad. But look, what I'm trying to, I want to move the conversation forward. I understand you want to loop for a little bit. What I need from you is for you to really clearly give me what you think is the most cost-efficient method of getting your micronutrients. What do you think is the most cost-efficient method? Give me specific meats for the specific nutrient.
Oh yeah,
and I'll give you a cheaper vegan method.
Yeah, the most cost-efficient way to get these starving, poor, frail, dying African children the nutrients that they need would be to ship them kiwis, and would be to ship them like a fatty meat, like chicken thighs or something, along with rice.
Okay,
and
chicken
eggs.
thigh. Yeah. So you think rice, eggs, and chicken thighs are gonna get you your macros?
Well, just chicken thighs and kiwis would meet all of your micronutrients. Yeah.
And kiwi?
Yeah, chicken thighs and kiwis would meet your entire.
What are you talking about? Kiwis the bird?
No, kiwis the fruit, like the green.
Yeah, that's
fruit.
vegan, stupid. You're retarded.
Oh, that's vegan, stupid. Yeah, you ship them
Okay,
both,
so
retard.
so just to be clear, what you think is you think the cheapest method is gonna involve kiwis and chicken thighs and rice. So the only non-vegan thing
I
there
know,
is
you
the
don't
chicken
even
thighs.
you don't even need to add the rice. The rice is just gonna be there to sort of keep the full.
You do need to add the rice. You need it for the
Oh,
carbs.
you don't know. Wait, you think fruits aren't carbs, moron?
No, you're
Fruits
so
are carbs,
retarded.
you
This is so
retard.
embarrassing. Oh
You
no.
might be the dumbest
So
person I
look,
know. You think a fruit isn't a carb? Are
you want
retarded?
healthy carbs. You don't want to give people a
You
bunch
want
of sugar
healthy
that's
carbs.
been
You
bound
think
with
that
with
fruits are
fibers. It's the
healthy
only
carbs,
way for
Wait, you think
you
sugar or food
to.
bad for you?
Why are you trying to pack me up? Like,
You're
what is
such a
it? What
fucking
is wrong
retard.
with you?
Oh my god! Like,
Do you know how to
the
have a
fuck,
conversation like a normal
quote-unquote
person?
debater would at least
You're
know about
you're
the
doing
nutrients of
terrible.
foods? Like,
I
you're such
understand
a
you think you're
moron.
doing really well,
Look,
but
I'm
you're
just
just not
gonna need you
engaging with
to
any
research-
arguments and
I'm gonna need you to
screeching over me
research
the entire time.
what fruits
So
are and
look,
how
I'm
they
gonna go
contain
through it
carbs,
with you,
and how
and
they
I'll
also
explain to
contain
you why
foods that
the
aren't
chicken
bad for you,
answer
and
was
how
a very
kiwis,
bad
chicken
answer.
breast, or
The
not
chicken
breast,
answer was not a very good
We'll
answer.
meet your entire
So,
micronutrient
more
profile.
effective
We'll do it
than
any other
chicken, more effective than chicken, and cheaper than chicken, whether it's bulk, if you want to compare bulk to bulk, we can do that, or we can do it resale to resale, or we
Just
can do
answer my
it
question,
individual
moron.
item to individual item, and you can see that if you want to go with the cheapest option, you wouldn't go with chicken, you would go with
posturing,
tempeh and
having
seitan.
Watch out, they're headed our way.
Do you have a
Timothy
counter
and
argument?
seitan.
You don't know anything about this topic. This is so sad.
I don't know what seitan is. It's a sort of meat substitute that tastes like ass. But look, just tell me what nutrients.
Really? Have you ever had it?
No, I haven't. I'm not a retard.
Okay, so it doesn't taste like ass. You don't know what it tastes like.
No. It, look, I
So
don't need to taste
answer.
Wait.
So
You think you
answer.
can't know something that tastes
Answer
like
the
ass?
argument that has been provided to you. The argument I provided to you is there's a cheaper alternative, and it's going to hit all of the. It's going to hit your dietary needs better than chicken will.
Yeah, so what nutrients are in seitan, and then list out all the nutrients in your nutrient profile and tell me which nutrients you're getting from it.
No, the problem you're having right now is you're not supposed to be asking me to list
Are
out the
we
nutrients.
being an
You made a
answer to
claim
the
that it was the case that it was
question,
cheaper.
or
I
are we
gave you my
being-
argument for it, and now I'm asking you, what is it that the seitan's not meeting? All you have instead is to ask me the question back because you don't really have arguments. You don't know anything about
Right,
this.
great. I'll just Google what nutrients are in seitan. Hold on.
You should do that. You should
Wait,
do your
so-
basic due diligence before having a debate.
Yeah, so Apollo
agree,
just
you
got
should
back from
think you're
praying.
right.
Do you guys want to like cut the short? Do you want to like give conclusions?
No, I want to debate this guy.
Fighter fist is
Okay.
some kept in my
Sure.
All right, so it has selenium, iron, phosphorus, and calcium. That's it. Did you say something else other than that?
What do you think? What else do you think there is that needs to be in there?
Wait, you're aware that your micronutrient profile includes vitamins, retard, right? Like K1, your B vitamins, your C
Yeah,
vitamins.
you
vitamin
gave
D,
examples
vitamin E.
of you gave examples of rice and of kiwis as examples of things that are also going to be in the diet. Those are both vegan and they contain. I don't know why you're not engaging with the argument. You just want to screech. If your goal in this debate was just to screech the entire time, then we can both pack each other up. Your microphone's dog shit. It's going to be really easy to do that. There's nobody's going to be able to hear you if all you want to do is talk over me while I'm speaking, because my voice comes through louder than yours does. What you should do instead of trying to talk over the entire time is try your best to engage with the fucking argument.
pretty sure those are bad.
Let's see.
Yeah, let's see you engage with the
Here we go.
argument.
Seitan doesn't include all the B vitamins, retard, so it's not meeting the nutrient profile.
Wow, it doesn't include all the B vitamins? You said it includes no vitamin.
It doesn't. Sorry, it doesn't meet your micronutrient profile, retard. Look, and if you want to sit there and
Do you
spurg
think
it-
this is helping your argument? You're spurring like a motherfucker.
Look, if you want to spurg because your mic is louder and you want to act like a little girl that we all know you are, that's
You wanted to
perfectly
do
fine.
that.
If you want to bitch and moan
You
and have
said
your little man
that
period,
seitan doesn't include vitamins. Is that something you still believe after doing a little bit of research on it?
we can do that. So just let me know when you find a food that meets.
Does
the
seitan
micronutrient
contain vitamins, yes or no?
profile. It does, yeah.
Were you wrong when you said it doesn't contain vitamins?
Ooh, that's not what I said. I said it doesn't contain all the vitamins necessary to meet the
No,
profile.
you didn't.
Retard.
You
So
said
there's a
that
cracking error on
how
your
is
part.
seitan going to meet your meet your nutrient needs? You need vitamins for your microbes. That's what you said.
I have. I'm gonna need you to stop being a moron and answer the question.
You're doing terrible. Do you think this shit's rhetorical? This is what you do. You're doing the full animator thing where you just spaz out with as many words as possible because you think for some fucking reason it's gonna help dig you out of the fucking argument. You've clearly said that the reason why it doesn't meet your nutritional goals is because the micros you need include vitamins, and it does in fact include vitamins.
Biological man to ever PMS. Look, just answer the question and stop bitching.
What question do you think you asked?
You're so fucking bird tracking. Oh my god. Give me a food that meets
No, nobody's not.
the vitamins in your micronutrient.
I don't need to give you a food. You didn't do that. You didn't do that. You gave a combination of food.
Yeah, combination works too, moron.
Yeah, and the combination of foods you had included vegan foods.
Are you just fucking stupid?
I've already given you the combination of foods.
You didn't give me the combination because kiwis also contain
Did I?
vitamins.
Yes or no? Did I give you the combination of? Like, yes or no? Did I give you the combination of? Yes or don't spaz? Don't spaz. Don't spaz. It's not your turn to spaz right now, right? It's my turn to spaz. You don't spaz. So listen closely to what I'm saying. Yes or no? Did I list out beans, rice, and vitamin supplements as 3 things which in combination will meet your macro and micro needs? Yes or no?
You did do that. The vitamins are still explored.
Okay, so when you said I didn't give you a list of food or a combination of food, that was wrong, correct?
Didn't that was less expensive, moron. Start tracking.
Yes or no? Did I give you a list of food or combinations of food?
No, you did that. That just didn't answer my question.
So when somebody were to say in this debate, just hypothetically, since you totally didn't say it, you say, hypothetically, if somebody in this debate were to say that I hadn't done that, they'd be a fucking retard. Yes?
Oh yeah, if they were to say you hadn't done that, right?
Yeah, they'd be a fucking retard.
I agree.
Yeah, and you're retarded then. Thank you.
Oh, and you're retarded then. Look, this moron is still not tracking.
That's the saddest shit I've ever heard.
What I said to you was one which is less expensive, which meets.
It is less expensive. Why do you think it's more expensive?
It's not less expensive. You've yet to demonstrate.
Why do you think it's more expensive?
Why do I think it's more expensive? Because I have no evidence to suggest that it's not.
Say that again. Why do you think it's more expensive?
Because I have no evidence to suggest that it's not.
Kill yourself.
Nobody can hear you when you're coke. You turn the mic down. And
That's
then
so
laugh.
bad. No way. Say that one more time. Why do you think it's not more expensive? Why do you think it's more expensive?
I'll say it one more time. Look, one more time. You want me to say it slowly?
Yeah. Say it real slow.
Because I have no evidence that it's not.
You're embarrassing the fuck out of yourself. You're really dumb.
Oh my gosh, this retard is like so low.
Your argument is actually so bad that everyone in the audience right now, unanimously, every single member of this audience knows the problem with your argument. I don't even have to say it. Everyone knows why you're wrong. You're just a fucking retard.
Yeah, so does me saying I have no evidence that my claim is false mean that I have no evidence my claim is true?
What the fuck are you trying to say?
Yeah. So you asked me, why do I believe this? I said, oh, I have no evidence to suggest that I'm wrong. Do you think that also means I have no evidence to suggest that I'm right?
Yo, real
Yes,
quick.
because that's the reason why you said you believe it, is because of your lack of evidence against it. So you,
Yo, guys,
if you had
guys,
never
guys.
researched, just to be clear, hold on, I want to ask one thing and we can end the debate here. Saucy, do you have any evidence to believe that Joe Biden did not dick down your mom? Do you have any evidence?
Ooh, yes, I have tons of evidence to believe that.
Really?
Yes.
Did you see him not dicking down your mom?
Yes, I've actually observed my
What
mom.
if he fucked your mom while you weren't looking?
Ooh, but I haven't never looked at my mom, right? I've always been looking
Yeah,
at
but what if he was just doing it while you weren't looking?
Alright,
Do you have any evidence that Joe Biden? You have any evidence against the claim that Joe Biden fucked your mom while you weren't looking?
Let's be clear, look, just so we can end this debate.
This guy watches his mom in the shower. We just timed that, bro.
Absolutely not.
I do watch mom.
Get this retard off the stage.
Alright, yeah,
Drag him down.
we're gonna move on. Thank you, Saucy, for that. But yeah, Apollo, you can debate him.
Yeah, that shit was funny as fuck. What's up?
What's good?
Nothing much. You couldn't hear a bunch of background noise. Give me one sec. Hold on.
Everyone says what?
Okay, so yeah, I'm pretty sure you believe that the logical problem with evil is a successful argument against God's existence, assuming that God is like an omnipotent being, correct?
Depending on your definition of God, it can be. I don't think it's an issue with all
So, like,
definitions
if
of
we
God. I think the
deploy
Bayesian
the
problem of
triumvirate.
evil is one that applies to all good gods.
Yeah, I remember we had an unfinished conversation regarding the LPOE, specifically being a successful argument or evidence against the proposition that God exists, assuming that by God you're stipulating omnibenevolence. which is a morally perfect being, just to be clear, right?
Yeah, if you have a being which is all-knowing and all-powerful and
Absolutely.
all good, then yeah, I would say I would say the logical problem is evil is an issue with that definition of God. Yeah.
Okay, so to be clear, let's say someone defines an all-good being as just a moral agent, or just an all-good entity. It's just a moral agent, which is perfect insofar as it has never committed any moral action. You think there'd
Yeah, I
be a
wouldn't-
contradiction?
No, I think it only comes when you can when you know all the bad things that are happening and you sit there doing nothing about it. That's when the issue happens.
Yeah, I'm stipulating that like God knows all the facts of the universe. Like he knows all things, right? He knows all the things which will happen and which are currently happening, and which has happened. So he knows all the facts, and he's also omnipotent insofar as he has the ability to change these facts over time. He's in control of all the possibilities, and also he satisfies the definition I've just provided of omnipotent.
You can change all facts, right?
Yeah, like he has the ability, right?
Yeah.
So
then
do you
there's
think
no
a
fact
contradiction in all
that
of
you'll
those
be able to.
stipulations?
Yeah. So there's no fact you'll be able to give me, right? There's not a fact that's going to exist out there that God couldn't change. Agreed?
That God couldn't change.
Yeah, you could change all facts. You said.
Yeah, when I say God can change all facts, it means in the sense where it is the case that for a given fact X at time 0, it is the case that that fact can come out of a state from existence to non-existence insofar as in time 1, for example, it is no longer a fact.
So there's no fact God can't change. Agreed?
Well, given the definition I've given, it would be the case that God can change facts, but it really depends on the semantics.
Yeah. So there's no fact that God can't change. Yes.
Depends on if you believe that that specific proposition is incompatible with necessitarianism, which I am a necessitarian, by the way. So what do you think about that?
So you're a necessitarian, but I'm sure you'd say something like God can change what's necessary.
No.
God
You
doesn't
say
dictate the
God can change that
metaphysical
which is
laws?
necessary, it isn't. Excuse me?
God doesn't define the metaphysical law?
Metaphysical law, what do you define as a metaphysical law?
That when you say necessary, I'm guessing you're using the metaphysical modal scope. So just the things that are necessary, the things that are entailed by the metaphysical laws?
Well, I take metaphysical modality to be kind of identical to logical modality. I just believe that like
Could
a lot
God
of things
change-
get...
Does
Okay.
does
Can I
logic
just clarify
pre-exist
quickly?
God? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say that like, so for things which we believe to be logically possible, it's really just possible insofar as imagination is concerned, but I believe that it is an illusion created from the fact that we don't possess divine knowledge.
Okay, so you think there is
Yeah.
some fact which justifies any particular thing that happens?
By justifies, in what sense of justification are you talking about?
Like, is a reason why it's still the best state of affairs? Whatever happens is the best state of affairs.
Motivational reasons, normative reasons, epistemic reasons, please
Normative.
clarify. Okay, so yeah, of course, I believe that there's a normative reason which justifies all events which occurs in the universe, despite all events being caused fundamentally by the existence of God.
Okay, and that proposition is one you know to be true, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so no matter what you do, you know there's some justification for why it happened.
Yeah.
So if you were to beat a baby to death with a shovel, you would know it's justified.
No. It's not justified for
Hold
me
on.
to do it, but it's justified for God to create a circumstance in which that's happened.
Well, you know that there's some justification for it occurring, right? You brought about its occurrence?
Yeah, we can just say that justification, in the normative sense, it is going to be indexed to whether or not there's some sense of moral accountability, right? So, for instance, let's say, for example, I do an action, okay? For that action, or for me to do something which is immoral, for it to classify me as an immoral agent, at least in that context, you'd have to be making the proposition that I was morally accountable, correct?
Well, you would say you are morally accountable if you beat a baby to death with a shovel, right?
Yeah, I just don't believe that that moral accountability crosses over to God. And so, for any event,
That's fine. You just think it doesn't matter if it crosses over to God. But that's not the argument.
Okay.
You're saying there's some fact that justifies it, and that's a fact that you know to be true. You know that there's some fact that justifies it. So you're aware of there being a justification for the action of you beating a
that
child.
justifies the
If
action.
you choose to do so.
Yeah, so the
It
problem
justifies
is
you
simply
do,
that-
yeah, doing
yes,
an action is just bringing about a state of affairs, yeah, so, like...
You're
you
using the
force it
language
in.
really weirdly. So usually when you're talking about an action being justified, we're talking about an action being justified indexed to the person committing the action or any specific thing which is involved in the causal chain of that action being justified or being done.
Well, all it means to do an action is to bring about a state of affairs, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if there's some justification for a particular state of affairs, and there was a justification for bringing about that state of affairs.
Yeah, that's just a tautology, but what I'm arguing here is simply, when you're saying justification for a state of affairs, right? The idea that I'm really trying to get across here is simply that when you're talking about normative justification, we're usually baking in moral accountability with it. So for instance, we say an action is justified specifically based on which person we are assessing when assessing that action. So we're usually assessing two things. So the person who executes the action, or anything which is involved in the causal chain of that action, and the action itself, and the consequences from that action. So I'm saying that when you're saying the action is justified, are you saying it is justified holistically or independently of any specific entity which is involved in the action, or are you specifically indexing it to a particular entity? Which
So I'm saying, on net, all things considered, it's justified.
All things considered.
Yeah, which is the type of justification you're saying God has, right? The same type of justification you're saying God has is a justification for this state of affairs, right? It's to say this is the best possible state of affairs. So no matter what you do, you're already, you did say that God has brought about the best possible state of affairs. You did say that.
No,
so
I never made that claim.
If you did, in this debate I asked you whether or not it's the case God...
Nope.
Yes, it's
Incorrect.
recorded. You're wrong.
It's recorded that I did not say this. I specifically said
that's
there are
not
a
how
couple
recordings
things
work, but you don't record a lack of audio, you record the audio. But
Wait,
it
hold on, you
is
don't think
recorded
you
on
can deduce a lack of something happening based off watching a recording and listening to a recording?
So that's not what I just said. So what I'm saying is that,
would
and
that be a
also
non-point?
also
What I
answer your
said,
question.
that's what
No.
I'm saying there.
Hold on. You don't need to
Okay,
just
you can go
fill out the air. I just want to fucking focus on the argument here. So if you don't think it's the case that God created the best possible state of affairs, then you're not a necessitarian.
That doesn't follow.
And now you're. So is it the case that there's any better state of affairs that's possible?
Depends on the mode scope you're employing of the conversation.
Logical.
Okay, no.
No. Okay. So if it's not logically possible to have a better state of affairs, this is the best possible state of affairs.
Under
All other modal scopes will be more narrow than logical. So I don't know why you asked what it depends on modal scope. It doesn't apparently.
Of course, you'd have to class the clarification in question. Of course, definitely.
Are there modal scope? What modal scope are you thinking of where there are things that are logically impossible but possible in the modal scope?
Demonstrate the relevance of this question, please.
Because you made a claim. It
And what
directly
did the
addresses
claim
your
is, which
claim.
made the claim. Which claim did I make, which had made the question relevant?
This is trolling. So if you think it's the case, right? If you think it's the case that the modal scope would matter there, then obviously you think that there are some modal scopes where things which are logically impossible can be possible in that modal scope. Yes?
How does that follow?
Is it just trivial?
Someone can ask you a question. Hold on. Just to be clear, just to clear all the confusion here, someone can ask you a question regarding what modal scope you're referring to without making any sort of independent proposition on the nature of other modal scopes as it pertains to the conversational content.
If you're asking what modal scope am I referencing, and there's only one state of affairs that's logically possible, then it's irrelevant what modals. Because if I was asking about any other modal scope, the answer would be the same, which is yes. This is the best possible state of affairs across all of them, because it's the best logically possible according to you. So if it's the best logically possible state of affairs, yes. If it's the best logically possible state of affairs, because if something is logically necessary, then it's necessary on all more narrow modal scopes.
Could I finish the question real quickly before you ask me a question? Where's the logical contradiction in someone granted the proposition that this is the best logically possible state of affairs, and there's some conceptual assessment of modality which would actually make it the case that my question was relevant? Where's the contradiction?
So I just told you. So the contradiction is that do you want? I can put it into P and not P, but the P and not P is not going to get you any more clear. So you can give a contradiction in more phrases than P and not P. That's ridiculous. So here's the form of P and not P. Because if you have any contradiction, all other contradictions follows. So the contradiction is both that it's the case that it is not a logical necessity for this particular state of affairs to be the case, and that it is a logical necessity for this particular state of affairs to be the case.
The second proposition right of the contradiction, could you establish the deductive entailment between what you're talking about and the second proposition?
For the second one?
Yeah, which is that there's no logical necessity.
No. Okay, so that's what you're asking about. So you're asking there's not a logical necessity. Why do I think that that's entailed? Well, the reason why it's entailed is because you're saying it's the case that you did not agree. You don't think it's the case. This is the logical, or that this is the best possible state of affairs, right? And if you're saying it's not the best possible, but it is the best logically possible,
I never made
that
any
means it's
information about
logically. Yes, you did. Okay, you're doing like a. You're doing like an autism thing where you're just like confused at what's going on in the conversation. So I'm going to try to move the conversation forward instead of looping on the silly point here. So let's hopefully move the conversation here. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, because
if you're not understanding this, this is genuinely just like schizophrenia.
No, I feel concerned about the fact that you're trying to make
everything that you're going to do in this conversation is because I'm just going to rely on you forgetting the things that you've said. I'm going to try my best to just remind you of them as it happens, and then we're going to move forward in the conversation by hopefully pointing out that you think it's the case that we exist in the best logically possible state of affairs. So, just to be clear, no matter what I do, we are still in the logically best possible state of affairs. You muted yourself, but that wasn't a server mute there. So
Yeah, sorry, there's a bunch of
everything we
background, so to
do,
be clear, this time,
everything that we do, we are still in the logic. I don't know why you're just trying to fucking fill out the dead air here. Like, I try my best to like let you talk when you want to talk, but you just constantly talk over, and it doesn't work for you because your microphone's garbage, right? So like, just listen. So if you think the situation that we are currently in, no matter what decision you possibly make, is still the logically best possible state of affairs, and you know that's the case, you know it's the case, you're in the logically best possible state of affairs, then you know the world could not have been any better if it was the case that you didn't beat that baby to death with the shovel. It wouldn't have made the world any better.
Yeah,
it would have been a worse world.
Yeah, so there's a confusion there. So there's a confusion you've been making the entire time, whereas you confused me specifically saying I've not made a specific claim, and me saying I specifically disbelieve in the proposition that this is the best logically possible state of affairs. I've clarified on numerous occasions when you've asked the question specifically, which is it the case that this is the best possible way in which the world could have been? I said it depends on what you mean by possibility, what's the model scope there. You interpreted that as... Hold on, quiet. You interpreted me asking a clarificatory question regarding what model scope you're employing in that specific question, with me specifically making an affirmative proposition regarding this not being the best logically possible state of affairs after I quite literally then
You said it is the best logically possible state of affairs. Yeah, I know. That's what a contradiction is. Yeah, that's a contradiction.
I was saying something which contradicts that. Yeah, you can't say that the individual proposition is a contradiction.
No, I'm saying the contradiction is the fact that you both affirmed that proposition and negated it, because what you said is it depends on the modal scope, when in fact, because you said it depends on the modal scope.
Okay, so what about me saying it depends on the modal scope, which entails that I make it the negation of the proposition that it is the best?
That would mean that for some modal scopes, the answer would be different.
Okay, so hold on there a second. You understand that there's nothing within you establishing modal semantical relevancy which would establish the idea that I would be affirming the negation of the proposition you think I affirmed previously, which would establish the contradiction. You understand?
So look, I'll explain it to you, right? Well, yeah, it definitely does. It's very obvious why it does, but I'll explain it to you step by step. I'm gonna ask you a couple of yes or no questions to hopefully get you there, right? The first one is, do you agree that for it to depend on the modal scope, that would mean that there are some modal scopes for which it's the case that this is not the best possible world?
That does not have to be true. But that's one of the
yes, it does.
that entail that. No, it could be the case that you're not making an information regarding there being such modal scopes.
So you don't recognize that. So your answer is no, you don't recognize that.
I'm saying that's not necessary to be.
Can you answer my question?
For someone to express such judgments.
Okay. You think you can say it depends on the modal scope, even though no matter which modal scope you choose, it's always the same answer? You think that's consistent?
I think it is consistent in the sense where you can make an argument that it possibly depends on the modal scope, which would allow for the possibility of the question you're asking to actually not be relevant to what I was talking about.
Okay. So here's an example, right? So imagine that I ask you, are there eggs at the store? And then you say, well, it depends on which store I go to. And then I ask, okay, are there any stores around you that don't have eggs? And then you say, no, they've all got eggs. And then I ask you, wait, hold on. So you said it depends which store you go to? And you say, yeah, it does. And then I say again, but are there any that don't have eggs? And you say, no, they've all got eggs. But it still depends on which one I go to, whether or not they have eggs. Would you see why that would be like a retarded way to speak and would obviously be a
in that example, definitely. But you have to understand there are far more nuances in the current thing we're talking about.
There is not a matter of nuances. If you are saying, like, if you're saying that it's the case that it depends on the modal scope, that would mean that some of the modal scopes will give you different answers. Because that's what depends means.
Repeat every single thing you've just said. Background
Okay.
noise. My end. Yes.
I got you. So if you're saying the answer to that question depends on X, that would mean that for some of the X's that you could choose, the answer would be different. That's what depends means.
It is different, or it could be different.
It is.
Okay, so what if I'm just referencing the possibility of it being different, which is why I'm
Then you
referencing
wouldn't
the
say.
dependency.
Then you wouldn't say it does depend. You would say it could depend.
Not necessarily. So, for instance,
Yes.
if you like, let's say, ask me, I'll give you an example. All right. So, the store example, right? So, let's say I'm not even aware of whether or not there are any other stores which I could purchase a specific item from, and so you ask me a specific question, right, regarding the price of this given item you want to purchase, and I say, well, whether or not it costs XYZ price depends on the store you're going to. Now, that claim specifically does not mean that I'm inherently presupposing that there are any other stores, right? Because for all I know, there
Mean that
could be
you're
others.
presupposing.
Hold on,
Yeah,
hold on,
it would
hold on.
mean that you do
Let
think
me
it's the
finish.
case that there are
Wait,
different
let me
prices, different stores.
Wait, you were complaining about me interrupting a while ago, so just let me finish this point.
Thank you.
All you did is
I was just gonna say, yeah, that's fine. I was just gonna say that, like, in the case I'm talking about, we'll just say it depends on the store you are going to purchase a particular item. I'm making this claim, or rather, yeah, I'm making that claim. However, it is not the case that I'll necessarily be affirming the existence of other stores, but rather I'm granting and acknowledging, instead of neglecting the possibility of there being other stores, which is why the claim seems feasible, even if it's just one store which exists. Right?
Okay,
So that's
but the
whole
issue is
point.
it's actually not even possible, right? So, like, one, I think your example there, you're still crazy, right? So in the example, no, if it depends which store you go to, what the price will be, that means that different stores have different prices. That's why that's true. Yeah, different stores do have different prices. That's why it does depend on which store you go to. If every
Yeah, but that
store
doesn't mean that
had
there are
one
other
fixed
stores.
price, then somebody saying that it depends which store you go to, they'd be fucking crazy. But the funny thing is, you can't even invoke the possibility argument there. Like, even if all of that wasn't fucking crazy, which it definitely is, even if it wasn't fucking crazy, you couldn't invoke the possibility argument because it's not possible. It's logically necessary for this state of affairs to be the way it is, so it's impossible for any modal scope. No matter what the modal scope you choose is,
Yeah, I
it would
think
be
you're- I think you're-
impossible for it to be otherwise
Okay.
because all the modal scopes are going to be more narrow than logical. Do you think there is a modal scope which is less narrow, broader than the logical modal scope? Yes or no?
So before I respond to that question, I'm gonna address the points.
Bro, this
made
guy does not answer
previously
questions.
to that question. No, I'm gonna answer the points you made first. That's how it's gonna work. So just
You're
a couple
definitely
of
not gonna
things.
answer
It
the
started off. Hold on. It started off. Hold on. This conversation started off from some minuscule problems, confusions you've had, and it just keeps on increasing. So the example you've given, okay, you talk about it being crazy. No, Sinthe, it's not crazy actually. Maybe if you actually understood the crux of what my point actually is, it isn't crazy, right? Because again, all I'm saying there and all I'm presupposing there is that what determines and fixes the prices of a specific item is the store you're purchasing that item from. Now, you
Oh,
can
get
agree
dipped.
with this
Oh, it was
proposition.
So
too
different
Wait,
stores have
hold on.
different prices,
You're
right?
being a bit too hasty, Sinthe. You're being way too hasty.
Because you're never gonna answer my question, bro.
So, Sinthe, hold on. Okay.
Let's hear.
So I was just gonna say that yeah, we both grant this proposition. However, that proposition can be granted even if it is the case that someone does not have a judgment regarding whether or not there are only one store that exists or more than one store that exists. They're just saying it depends on the store in the sense where if you were to buy it from a store which could exist, which does not exist, the price may change. That's rational, and there's nothing crazy about this. I'm not sure you don't understand this.
Okay, you're unironically this may just be an ESL moment because this is fucking deranged. But you said you were gonna answer my question and you still
Said your
didn't.
point
You
is
think you answered my
correct? That would
question?
be definitely correct.
Do you think you've answered my question?
Absolutely.
What was my question that you answered?
The question regarding you asking me if it is the case that there's some compatibility between believing that it depends on the store you're purchasing the item from,
No.
and you believing that it is the case that it is the only store, in the sense where it would
So-
not create an unintuitive consequence. That was the question.
No. I asked you
Oh,
very
no, the
simply.
question, sir, forgot your
Yes,
question.
you are correct that is not the question. That was not the question. You were very wrong about what the question was. However, here's the question. I'll
asking the
present it
question when I
again,
was saying that
and
that
I
was
will
not
give
the
you.
question. That would
I
be
will
correct.
give you. I will give you what the question was, and hopefully you'll hear it. Okay. Here's the question. The question I asked you was, yes or no, do you believe that there is a modal scope which is more broad than logical? Do you think you've answered that question?
I don't have a judgment on that proposition.
Okay. You don't have a judgment on whether or not you answered that question?
You don't have to affirm a proposition regarding the nature of other modal scopes.
Okay.
to believe
So,
that there
I'm
is a
glad that
possibility
you
such
are-
existence.
I'll be honest with you. I do consider
really
I'm
confused.
agnostic
Are you
on
okay?
that. Even though it's a crazy answer, I do agree that I am agnostic
Crazy
on that
based
is an
on what
answer.
specifically?
But
When you're
that
saying
was an
it's
answer to
crazy,
the
what does that
question that
mean?
you had not answered previously, and somehow you managed to dodge a new question. So just to be really clear, you agree that prior to saying that you're agnostic on it or you don't have a judgment on it, you had not answered that question, correct?
I would not say so. I would not
You
say
would
I'm
not
not
say
answering
that?
the question. I think all
You
the
need to
points
listen to
made
this
in the
back, bro. You
conversation-
fucking sound
Guys,
crazy.
Hold on, I think
But-
me
go ahead.
saying currently, me saying currently that I'm agnostic on whatever the question was you're talking about. I think me saying this is just an emphasis and the repetition of what I've said previously, which you've just not tracked. So if anything, it's
Yeah,
not me
I don't think
dodging,
I'm having
it's just
issues
you
tracking.
finally grasped the thing I've not dodged.
I feel like I'm having a really easy time tracking you. I feel like you're just saying a bunch of stupid shit. And generally, I don't think you say that much stupid shit. So I think
like
there are a lot of
another
views that I
means of
disagree with you on.
projection.
They're not that stupid. But
Okay, wait, so
look,
just
here's
one
the
thing we can
issue. I don't know why you're
investigate
trying. Look, I gave you time to speak. Right? You talk for these like long monologues that relate in no way to what's being
No, I
said,
don't.
and then you interrupt constantly.
I really
The Apollo strategy. Here's the Apollo strategy. It's the breakdown. This is where we throw the nukes out. We talk about the other person's strategy. We make it really hard for the other person to debate in the future. Here's the Apollo strategy: is long-winded, rambling nonsense that no way relates to the point, and you dodge every question constantly, and then you feign agnosticism when somebody presses you on the question. As long as you
That's
just
true,
mock
man.
that, there's literally nothing else he's got. So,
We're waiting
Apollo,
for it to
we'll
actually
go
get to the
through the
point now.
argument. I'm gonna get you. Don't worry, buddy. We're moving forward in the argument. I'm gonna
I'm
make
worried
sure
about
that
you,
you.
actually. I'm really
I'm gonna
concerned.
force you to
I'm really
move
worried
forward
about you.
instead of just
I'm really
us looping
worried,
back
Sam.
and forth on meta. Here's the move forward.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, take
if
your
you
time,
think it's the
Tim.
case that it's logically necessary, then if it's logically necessary for things to be the way they are, then they could not have been different no matter what I did. Because I couldn't have done differently, in fact. No matter if something's logically necessary, if some state of affairs is logically necessary, then I couldn't have made it any other way. So if an action, as you've agreed, an action is when you bring about a state of affairs, if it's the case that it's the best possible state of affairs, is the one that is the result of my action, and that's true for any action anyone's ever done, then for any action anyone's ever done, they've brought about the best possible states of affairs. If somebody's brought about the best possible states of affairs, then they are justified in that action. If they knowingly do so, they are justified under every sane view.
Back in the swing of things.
If you right now, Apollo, if you beat a baby to death with a shovel, according to the claims that you've already said out loud, that would entail that you've done the thing which you knew to bring about the best possible state of affairs. True?
Mess with the amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, we're gonna hit the hay after. All right, we should if Apollo's gone, we should move on to Puppy Coco, who wants to be pulled up. Puppy Coco is still in chat. Yeah, Puppy Coco's still in chat. You gotta raise your hand.
Yeah, I got muted. My bad. So just to respond to what you've said, really, I'm gonna address everything you've said. I was just gonna say I just
What do you
found it
mean
really
got muted? You
comical
muted
that
your
you
damn self.
complained. You complained, Synth, about long-winded responses, and you gave the longest response of the conversation. Just to address a
That's
couple
not-
of things, right? Yeah, let's relax for a second. You're like really spazzing out. So just to address a
Pleasure
couple
not
of
to-
things, no, Synth, I don't agree that it is the case. If it is the case, and the fake laugh is gonna help you right now. If
That's a
it
fake
is
laugh.
the case that it is logically possible, logically necessary for X to occur, then it could not be the case that under some other given modal scope, it could actually be possible.
Not under a
for it
different
not to
modal
occur. I
scope.
don't agree with this proposition, actually.
Nobody said a different modal
I don't have
scope.
to make an hold on. I don't have to be able to specifically articulate the modal scope for me to grant the possibility, the epistemic possibility of such modal scope existing. But I would like
There's
to
no-
ask you the question.
an
which you've been
epistemic possibility
deviating-
of that modal scope
yeah,
existing?
Doing that thing again, whereas you're just trying to steamroll the conversation with your Quicksilver rhetoric instead of actually addressing the substance because you're incapable. of
Quicksilver
doing so.
rhetoric.
So yeah, and you're laughing because you're coming to the self-realization that what I'm saying is actually correct. So
That's
just
right,
real
that's right.
quickly, the idea of been deviating from the thing
It
that
was
we're
just
trying to
funny.
be pressing on, which is simply how does it follow from the antecedents there that under all specific conceptual assessments of the term possibility, it would be the case that it is not sure that it could be otherwise. Granted,
Because
logicalness
the-
is determinism.
Yeah, given you said an epistemically
Take
possible
your
modal
time. We're
scope,
with you, Sen.
there's no time that needs to be taken. You just have to like listen. So, given you said epistemically possible modal scope, I'm sure you agree epistemic possibility is more narrow than logical possibility. Correct?
I'm agnostic on that claim. Depends on one's
You're
epistemology.
agnostic. What?
Absolutely.
You think there are? You think
think
that there are
epistemology is a
things
very
which are
nuanced
epistemically possible, but logically, you think they are logically impossible. You think those exist?
Depends on the logical system you accept, Sent, which grounds your epistemology. That's not surprising.
But there are like
under the logical system you accept is the one we're indexing it to.
I thought you were making a much more holistic claim and assessment.
The logical system that you ascribe to, in which you think it's the case that all states of affairs are logically necessary. What do you mean, wow? If you think it's the case that you're trying to adapt to pretend that you have my rhetorical style, it's really corny. It's just really weird. So just engage with the argument. What you said is that it's the case that it's logically necessary. So, are there things which are, according to your definition of the words logical and your definition of the word epistemic, are there things which are epistemically possible but logically impossible? Yes or no?
And all the confusion, Sim. So the first time when
yes or no to my question, retard. Don't do this over and over again. Yes or no?
Do this weird thing which you believe.
Look, the only thing that we can do with Apollo is you just have to force him to get a yes or no answer out. Yes or no, Apollo?
Is nothing you're doing is.
Look, I'm asking for a yes or no to my question. Is it the case that there are things which are logically impossible but epistemically possible? Yes or no?
I'm gonna wait.
Is it the case there are things which are logically impossible but epistemically possible? Yes or no?
Not a yes or no question, Sinthe. I'll explain why. Do you want me to explain why it's not a yes or no question?
Is that a proposition embedded in that question?
Just because there's a proposition embedded in the question does not mean that the responses to that question in the form of yes or no or I agree or I disagree would be sufficient responses which would be informative.
You can say they're not sufficient, but they should be the beginning of your response. This is a proposition. So it's true or false. All propositions are true or false. You're not going to respond to the question. You're going to ignore the question and go on a look for a dialogue.
I'm going to respond to the question.
So yes or no, is this true?
Yes or
either
no,
it's true or it's not true.
Are sufficient informative responses, Synth.
I don't care what you think is an informative response. I just want an answer.
You don't think truth can depend on context, Synth?
Answer my question.
Answer my question.
Your question came after mine. I'm not going to answer it.
So now it's funny because now you're gonna actually complain about me asking you a yes or no question when you were actually complaining about this previously. About me
I'm not
answering your
complaining about your question being a yes or no. I'm complaining about it being a question that came after mine as a dodge of my question.
You don't think my question relates to your
question? Was there any part of my question you didn't understand?
I understand every single part of your question. It was one dimensional. It was really
okay. Then you should be able to answer the. You should be able to give me an inquiry as per the one fucking dimension of that question. Is it true, or is it a not
yes
true
or no,
proposition?
Synth, I don't know if you're just really so
I'm sorry, you believe in the law of the middle?
That there are questions that can be answered.
You can say I
yes
don't know.
No.
That's fine. Do you not know?
I know that you just don't have the social cues to understand.
You're not going to answer that question either. This is insane.
Yes or no, which is actually not dodging the question.
This is the most embarrassing thing I've ever heard you do, genuinely. So I'm asking you very simply,
is
right?
This like another projection of your
I want to hopefully move the conversation forward in some way and hopefully make some dialectical progress, but I know you don't want that to happen. So I'm going to try my best to get you to understand this.
I've been trying to get that to happen the entire time.
Do you think it's the case that there is any random thing, any random state of affairs, which is logically impossible, but epistemically possible? You can say yes, no, or I don't know, and if you don't want any of those three, would you rather say I prefer not to answer? Which one of those would you go with?
It can be both, depending on the epistemologist, then.
Oh my god, I'm asking about yours. I already told you very clearly, based on your definition of epistemology.
No, hold on.
There we go. No, it wasn't that complicated a question. Thank you so much. You finally answered the question. The answer is no. So, if there is nothing, no, it doesn't matter what you look. If you think it's the case that it's not epistemically, under your definitions, when you invoke those terms, if it is not epistemically possible to have something which is logically impossible, then it must be the case that any modal scope which you have epistemic access to must be one which is more narrow or equally narrow to the logical modal scope. You cannot have one that's more broad. This very trivially straightforwardly follows. So, it does not depend on which modal scope you go. It does not depend on which. No, I'm not done. It does not depend on which. I'm just gonna fucking ramble indefinitely like you do. So it does not depend on which fucking modal scope you choose. There's no modal scope dependency there. If it's logically necessary, then it's necessary under all the other modal scopes that you believe are real. Every single one that you're committed to, you think that each and every other single one, it's also logically necessary under that one. So you should have no more modal scope confusion for the rest of this debate. Now going forward, making some dialectical progress now. If it's the case that you think that I don't know why you're doing the laughing thing like you're trying to affect the rhetoric. If you think it's the case that the state of affairs that you're currently in are logically necessary, you're not doing well here. Okay. If you think the current state of affairs and all state of affairs that have ever existed are logically necessary, then there's nothing that you've ever done which would not make the world the best possible world, because it is the only possible world. If it is the only possible world, then it is the best possible world. True or false?
Now that you're done, you know, yapping,
You're not gonna answer that when I do. That's so sad. So that's exactly what I fucking thought would happen. So let's try again. The question that I asked you was a true, false question. You can say, I don't know, or I prefer not to answer. Which one do you want to go?
You're so scared for me to give a response. If you give a long one,
who the fuck would be scared of you? You're like washed up.
Want me to of course you definitely.
You're doing terrible.
Give me back on us right now. So anyways, I'm going to address the point and explain to you and dog walk you through it.
Do you want to dog walk through an answer to my question?
Yeah, I'm going to dog walk you through why you made a non-point, dumb fuck. So just to be clear, this
oh my god, he's never going to answer.
The acceptance of the
this is so incredibly sad.
You're yapping again. You're doing this weird thing where you believe that.
Why wouldn't I interrupt you? You're just obviously interrupt. You're just obviously constantly interrupting. I'm gonna interrupt you back. And if you don't have any kind of response to my questions, you can't answer true or false.
I have never
terrified right now. I'm fucking petrified.
I've never seen this.
Can you just try your best to answer my question?
So could I just finish the point I was going to make? So just to be clear,
no, you can't finish the point you're going to make. Answer my question, then you can finish your point.
Sinthe, you're confused.
What are you doing?
Okay.
This is so pathetic.
Look,
just answer the question. I don't care what you think the confusion is.
Why do you make
answer the question, then address the point,
and then want me to address your question? I'm gonna just
if you answer the question, look, the issue, I would trust you to do that if it wasn't for the things that I've already fucking shat on you for doing this debate. We've all seen you attempt, look, you've poisoned everyone with that strategy now. You can't use that rhetorical strategy anymore. Because after you said you were going to address my points, then answer the question, what you ended up doing was not answering the question at all, and you even seem to recognize you had not answered the question. So, I would like you to answer my question first, and the moment that you answer my question, I will go silent, let you ramble for as long as you want to. So, if you want to answer my question, do that up front, because I know damn well you're not actually going to append it to the end, because we caught you not doing that earlier. Everyone saw it happen.
Promise me you not talk when I'm talking, to respond to the other.
I promise you, after you answer my question, I will not speak. I will interrupt you if you dodge my question. So, my question to you. My question to you, right? I want to make some dialectical progress here. So, is this true or false?
Yeah.
If this is the only logically possible state of affairs, then this is the best logically possible state of affairs. True or false?
Under my semantics, definitely true. Now, could I make some addressals or responses to the previous points? So, to be clear in this, right, you specifically said, right, that it is the case that clearly, given my epistemology, it would be the case that if it is true, that I believe in classical logic clearly, and it would be the case that under my epistemology, it could not be epistemically possible for this to be the case. And I grant this. However, the first point I made, Sinthe, regarding me expressing agnosticism towards the idea of... yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Anyways, someone's giving me something. Yeah, so me expressing my agnosticism towards the question and whether or not it is possible and whether it depends on the type of possibility that's been referenced for it to determine whether or not it is possible for some logically possible state of affairs to be not possible for it to not be the case, or rather some logically necessary. Given that specifically, when I was making that reference, I was not indexing that response to my epistemology. I was making a more holistic approach insofar as I was saying, given all specific conceptual assessments of epistemology that is available, right, it is in fact possible, doesn't have to be indexed to my epistemology, but just broadly speaking, that you could have a specific situation where something is logically possible and you're a logical necessitarian, and given some other different modal scope, it is actually not possible. And so it is the case that there's, give me 1 second. Hold on. Oh yeah, got you. So anyways, so Sinthe, just to address a couple of things, right? Someone is complaining about like me speaking a bit too loud because I'm like outside. So anyways, to address a couple of things, as I was saying,
this guy is screaming on a parking bench.
No, I'm like actually outside, like right outside my mansion. Actually,
that's crazy. You're like screaming down the street.
Bro, I'm just like that, bro. I'm like.
It's just like that. Your neighbors are like, can you keep it down? You're like, I got you. I'm sorry. I'm really like that.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just have respect for elders. So.
That's right. That old man told you what to do.
I think it's just
dog walked you. No, keep going. Keep going.
Anyways, so I was saying that there's no incompatibility between the most recent claim I've made regarding the epistemic possibility not existing, but it being the case that it would be possible given some other, you could say, possible conception of epistemology. That's my point.
That's it. Okay, so
Yeah, that's really just
I've got some premises. I just want to know if you think these are true or false. Right? So premise 1: all states of affairs in the real world are the best possible states of affairs. True or false?
under my system, definitely.
Yeah, we're always talking under your system here, and we're talking about do you believe these propositions. So, premise 2: if that's true, then no matter what I do, it will still lead to the best possible state of affairs. True or false?
Of course.
Throw a ball?
Okay, so if no matter what you do, it will lead to the best possible state of affairs, then if you beat a dog to death, then rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. True or false?
Yeah, given the fact I'm involved in the causal chain.
Yeah, so true or false?
That hair is back.
True or false?
What are you
What's up?
talking about?
So is that a true or a false to premise 3?
Is it true that it is moral? No.
No, that's not premise 3, right? Premise 3 is, if no matter what you do...
Properly, so yeah, I'm just
Yeah, I've
trying
noticed.
to see what you're saying cause the background noise.
Yeah, so if
You're
no
not
matter
the
what you
question.
do, it would still lead to the best possible state of affairs, then if you beat a dog to death, then rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. True or false?
It is the best possible state of affairs, in the sense of logical possibility.
So true.
When you say
True?
lead to, are you
Oh
just saying
god,
that
this
like...
is so pathetic.
Hold on, when you
No,
say
we all know what
lead
you're
to,
doing.
It's not pathetic.
You're not even good
It's
at
not
dodging the
pathetic, but to
question.
clarify the terms there, of course. When you say lead
There's
to, are you
nothing
saying
here
that it
about,
is
like-
not the best
Okay,
logically
mhm.
possible state of affairs, then?
Well, I could not understand the words that just came out of your mouth.
Yeah, I'm Ethan, sorry. I'm asking you, is it the case that when you're saying it leads to the best logically possible state of affairs, are you assuming that it is not the best logically possible state of affairs in the question?
No? Obviously not! The
So,
fuck?
to be clear in
So,
this, to be
is
clear
that
in this, I
proposition a
grant
true or a false proposition under your definition?
the proposition regarding it leading to the best, of course not, because all things in reality would be the best possible state of affairs, logically speaking.
So you said, if all states of affairs in the real world are the best possible states of affairs, then no matter what you do, it would still lead to the best possible states of affairs is true. You said that.
Of course.
Okay. So if no matter what you do, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs, then if you beat a dog to death and rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. True or false?
Of course.
Okay, so then not false, it's actually true. So, there we are. Premise 3, true. So, given those premises, the conclusion is, if you beat a dog to death and rape a baby, it would lead to the best possible state of affairs. That is logically valid given premises you've agreed to, yes?
Of course.
Okay, so, if you beat a dog to death and rape a baby, it will lead to the best possible state of affairs. And, you know this to be true, yes?
Yep.
Okay, so you would know that if you beat a dog to death and rape the baby, it will lead to the best possible state of affairs. Agreed?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so that's the reductio in your fucking view.
So the issue as to why it's not a reductio is because there's like a lot of equivocation. So to be clear in this, you assume first and foremost that like the moral responsibility or accountability, which would make something immoral and moral respectively, is going to specifically and sufficiently be determined
That is
based
just
off whether or not it
overpowered as fuck.
leads to the best
I'm gonna be
possible
back.
set of affairs given my semantics, which is not true. My kind of moral accountability, which determines an action being moral and immoral respectively, is dependent on whether or not you participate in some sort of like causal relation to an action which is non-formal like. So if you are familiar with Aristotelian causality, you understand this. That's just one of them, and the other one is having the irrational faculty to understand the moral facts, or to know the moral facts. And so
Yeah, I
even
don't
if
know
it
how
is
you
the case-
even have
even if it is the
Aristotelian
case-
talk here.
Hold on. So
It's
even
like
if it is
completely the
case-
idea you have Aristotelian talk is like deranged,
Hold on.
given that you think
Even
we
if
are
it is the
in a
case,
logically
then-
necessary condition.
And I don't
So
think
people
you
don't
guys-
have
You're doing
capacities.
this thing again where you're interrupting again. You're interrupting again.
real
That's all
quick-
you were
Shit,
gonna
we interrupt
say.
each other
If I
constantly. Like,
if I
you can't
answered
do the
your
thing.
questions- If
Jesus.
I answered your questions, you're not interrupting, right?
Yo, guys, real
So
quick.
just
You
do
are.
the other things you think. Because you're
You
Wait,
are.
hold on. Wait, Apollo.
Yeah.
So Synth is over.
So someone who prematurely ended the
the
vote.
hour. Synth, do you want to keep going, or do you need to be somewhere? Because I'm fine with, like,
This
if you
guy
guys
wants
want to wrap
first
it up
end
within
of
the
debate
next
before
10
you
minutes.
respond. It's
10 minutes.
fucking pathetic.
Even though I usually go to bed at like 10 p.m.ish, and it is 10 p.m. my time, we could do a little bit longer.
You got
So I'm
loud
gonna give you a
again.
response.
Oh, my bad. Is it fixed?
Yeah,
Fixed?
so
Yeah.
so do you want me to respond to your point, Synth, or are you gonna keep on speaking over me?
If you guys want to wrap it up, give it like another 10 minutes. That's like that's cool. But
Yes,
Yeah.
I was just making sure.
Like another 5 minutes or whatever. Should be fully fleshed out by then. Okay, so The reductio, basically, you're trying to pull off here is just to point out that given any action, considering that every specific event is the best possible or leads to the best possible state of affairs, it is the case that such event or action is morally justified. I don't think that follows. Given my kind of moral justification, it would not follow. So for the LPLU to actually be successful, it has to be the case that given my kind of moral justification, it is the case that these actions would be morally justified, or rather it is the case that either all of those actions, which
She
are
needs a nerf,
obviously
I think.
moral, would be morally justified, or it is the case that God specifically
One of these
does
again.
immoral actions, granted that
That's
these
not what
actions
I
are
did
not
at
morally
all.
justified. None of these specific disjuncts are satisfied or justified or extrapolated on given the quote-unquote reductio that you've landed. And one more thing is specifically that, again, as I've specified previously, and I'll specify and re-emphasize on this point again, by moral accountability, right, I have a specific notion of moral accountability, which for one, my kind of ethics does not specifically and is not sufficiently determined based off the optimality principle of utilitarianism. It doesn't even bake in that concept. So to even apply that and just use this as some sort of non-point thinking that it is successful is actually preposterous to me. But if you have any other responses you'd like to give, I'm free to hear that.
Yeah, so I like the fact that you are now walking back the reasons why you gave for an action to be justified, because you said the reason why God is justified is because his actions bring about the best possible state of affairs. You did say that. Agreed?
Never said this.
Yes, you did. Okay, look, this is the issue with an Apollo debate, is you'll just like lie about what's happening in the
I'll
debate.
explain to you what I said. And I know for a fact I have not said this. What I said specifically is that the reason as to why God's actions would be justified is because, for one, it is the case he is never, or rather, it is the case that he's not morally accountable for the actions. And I've already specified my conceptual analysis of moral accountability, which has no relevancy to actualization of best possible worlds. So I know for a fact he does not track in the conversation.
So then,
Oops.
God is unaccountable for these actions, you say, yes?
No, he isn't. He's not morally accountable.
Okay, then he's not justified in these actions, correct?
Doesn't follow that he's not justified.
It does. If you're not accountable for an action, you can't be justified in it. Am I justified in you
understand?
beating a baby to death?
Excuse me?
Am I justified in you beating a baby to death? Doesn't make any sense.
Me beating the baby to death?
Yeah, that's nonsense, right? Like, obviously, I can't
so
be justified in you beating a baby to death. I can be justified in the things that I'm
Isn't this like
doing.
the typical
I can't be
argument you just say
justified in something you're
nonsense
doing.
Given an argument?
No, normal people understand the issue here.
Yeah, so no, there's no issue there. You're not understanding the argument here. The argument pointing out here is that there's nothing immoral about what God has done. Okay, so when I'm talking about omnibenevolence, I specifically defined this in the beginning. I've said it's a morally perfect being, and then I went on to say that by moral perfection, what I mean there, that assessment is just a being which has never committed an immoral action. And I said, and I
you
asked
just,
you
like,
numerous
just
occasions,
blatantly waiting
is it the
for,
case
like,
that granted this
first.
specific element or attribute of God specifically, and the other omni attributes, do you believe there's a contradiction? You said on 2 to 3 different occasions, yes, you still believe there's a contradiction. Cool, understood. Now I've explained to you as to why,
I can be
given that
upset.
assessment, it would be the case that he would not commit any moral action, and so his moral perfection is still something which is sustained. So when I'm talking about God being morally justified in creating these events, all I just mean there, right, whether you want to say it's proprietary or it's non-proprietary, is just simply that he did not do anything wrong despite being an intentional agent which caused these events to have occur.
So
all I
you can
mean.
be justified in an action that somebody else did.
In the case of
So all I
God,
need to do
yes,
is play
because
passive.
God is
No, in the
gonna be
case of broadly,
cause
your
he's
definition of
gonna be the
justification means
prior
I
cause.
can be justified in an action you did.
That's so disanalogous, then. You're even understanding.
It's not an analogy. That's not what analogies are. I'm asking you very
I'm not saying it's
directly.
an analogy. You can say something is disanalogous.
You just said that's
without saying it's an
disanalogous.
analogy.
I'm telling you,
Disanalogous
I don't
means it's not
intend it to be
similar.
analogous because it's not supposed to be an analogy. So track through what I'm saying. This you are so
Analogous
yourself.
does not necessarily reflect someone postulating an analogy. They can be used interchangeably
not
with the
tracking.
words
This is so
similar or the same. So that's retarded. So let's get back to what I'm saying. What I'm saying is
Genuinely, you need to up your English knowledge.
Yeah,
That's what
that-
you're
that-
saying.
that needs-
So
that needs to be
trying your
known.
best
So
to follow my
I'm saying
argument
there,
here. I want you to do this.
you're not
I
following
asked you a
any
question.
argument,
I just want to
including your own
know:
argument.
is it the case, right, that your definition of
embarrassing.
justification, your definition of
Okay.
being justified, is just that
In
you
this
did not do
context of
anything
God.
wrong?
In the context of God, where he's morally perfect and he's an agent, yes, for sure, definitely. In this
In the context of God?
yes.
Okay,
When I say it's
so
morally
you're
justified, all I
so
mean
you're
there is saying-
equivocating.
all
You
I'm
have a
saying-
different
you
definition
want
in the
to
God
understand-
context
you
than
want
in
to
every other
understand-
context.
That's not even equivocation.
He also has, like,
but do you want to
insane-
understand
Yes,
my point, or do you keep on speaking over me? Which one is it? So what my point is simply, all I mean in this context of this conversation, when I say God is morally justified, is simply he's a moral agent. he intentionally caused all of these things, but nonetheless, he's not morally accountable for these things. That's all I mean there. Now, if you want to be a pedantic princess about the semantics and say, oh, generally speaking, people don't use the word this way, I don't care to argue that, but you should actually...
You don't use the word that way. That's the problem, is that you use the word in a different way in every other instance, other than the moment you talk about God. You think in that sense of justification, now is the case that all justified means is you haven't done anything wrong. So if you were an atheist, you would still think God is justified.
No.
If God didn't exist, would you think that God has ever done anything wrong?
You're saying God is morally justified assuming that he exists.
If God didn't exist, would he have ever done anything wrong? Yes or no?
Are you affirming this to be an analytic fact or a synthetic fact?
Yes or no?
If it's a synthetic fact, no, you'd not be affirming him to be morally justified. Definitely not.
If God didn't exist, would he have ever done anything wrong? You say no.
Depends on the type of fact you're trying to postulate, son.
If you didn't exist, would you have ever done anything wrong?
Then no, you'd not be affirming this proposition.
If God didn't exist, would he have done anything?
You can be an atheist and say all propositions about God, given that specific context, would be false.
This is so embarrassing. You know people can tell what you're doing,
It's not
right?
embarrassing. You're just not understanding the point, which is if you're not stipulating God's existence in the proposition.
Genuinely, who do you think is dumb enough to fall for this? That real question. Who in the fucking chat down below do you think is dumb enough to fall for this? Name
every single thing. You have not given any response, any legitimate.
Name one person down below who you think would fall for this.
I'm not even looking at my screen, and I'm pretty certain that there are people below who believe this. But do you want to focus on what I'm saying?
I focused on what you're saying, and what you're saying is a dodge. What you're saying is a dodge. So, I'm gonna ask this over and over again, and hopefully one day we'll get the Apollo answer. So, I'm asking you, if God didn't exist, would he have done anything? This should be a very simple no.
It depends on the proposition, Synth. I've just explained this.
It really doesn't. The proposition is, if God didn't exist, then he didn't do anything. True or false? Is that a true or false proposition?
So if the proposition is attempted to convey some given fact about something which exists, then no, it should not be the case if it's true.
If it was trying to convey something about something that did exist, then it still wouldn't be true.
Do you understand what I mean when I'm talking about someone believing that all propositions about God being systematically false?
You don't genuinely. You should stop pretending to be smug. This is like embarrassingly bad for you. This is the one debate that you should look at yourself in the mirror afterwards and admit to yourself that you did fucking terrible. You're clearly dodging a question over and over again.
You're not giving any responses, then. You're not giving any good responses at all.
Do you think my question can be answered with a yes or a no?
It's logically possible. Yeah, definitely. It's logically possible.
Okay. Are you able to?
Of course.
Okay, would it be a yes or a no?
I would say this would be neither.
Guys,
Okay, we look at that point. Look, I'm fine with ending the debate there.
You want to give conclusions?
That was the conclusion.
That's your conclusion? I'll just give my.
That's both of our conclusion.
Oh, really?
All right, we got more. Yeah, we got more people to move through. We're not doing like a conclusion thing. So look, we should move to the next person here. This is like embarrassingly stupid from Apollo.
Yeah, it was embarrassing for you, dog. You're just not giving any contribution.
No, you actually. You were the one who was embarrassed.
Wait.
Bring Puppy Coco up. Puppy Coco's
wasn't Coco supposed to go first? Yeah, I'm not more important.
does anyone else want to? I do have stuff I need to do. If anyone else wants to, Moxie, if you want to come up and mod. I don't think Mercury can talk right now.
Okay, so Sinthe, I just have a couple of really quick questions. You'll probably like wrap this up and then back me up really quick, but I just want to ask. So, why is something bad? Like, how do you know something's bad?
I just use Bayesian reasoning, and I try to reason about the pleasure and the suffering involved.
Okay, so when you say pleasure or suffering, you're talking about someone's quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Earlier I heard you say that if someone is not aware of the facts, like if someone's like a rapist and they're not aware of like the harm that it causes to the person who's being raped, that they're not blameworthy for engaging in rape, you said? Is that true?
If it was the case that you had some, yeah, that is true. If it was the case you had some individual and they had no idea what the fuck was going on, they didn't really understand there was a person that they were harming, yeah, they're not blameworthy. Yeah.
Okay, so if someone was an
Commitments
eliminativist about qualia and they rape someone, would they be blameworthy?
I think that people who are eliminative, so yes, but I think that people who are eliminative about qualia are just confused about what qualia references. I think they do in fact recognize what it's like to feel bad. I think they just don't understand that the word qualia is being ascribed to that.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Those are good questions. Great question.
All right. Does anybody else want to come up before I go? We can just. Oh, I guess nobody else.
I'm about to get highly rhetorical. Get ready.
Ready? No. I'm gonna get quadratic.
Yeah, that's not true.
I'm about to get quintic.
I'm about to get qualia.
Oh, qualia? No.
You're about to get hylic while I'm getting pneumatic out of here. You're not even ready for how pneumatic I'm about to be. You are crazy for the fucking behaviors. I will pack you the fuck up.
Yeah,
go ahead.
What's the proposition? What's the proposition?
You nasty nigga, ugly ass bitch.
Yeah, I wanted to debate you on the quantifier account of ontological commitment.
Okay.
Yep. Do you have an argument for the quantifier view, or do you want me to give some counter argument?
So I mean, I've got some arguments in favor of what I view as the quantifier view there. Just to clarify, so I'm on the same page as you. When you say the quantifier view of ontological commitment, are you referencing the one I invoke with the independent Boolean values, or something else?
I'm just referencing like the standard view. It's like if we have a quantifier and it's not dispensable from our best physical theories, then because that's how this view I assumed you held, at least from prior conversations with you.
So I'm not entirely sure if I hold that view. It depends on how we cash out a bunch of the terms there, but I'm going to assume that we're cashing things out in the way that I'm going to understand it. So I'll say yes. I'll lock in a yes.
Okay. You mind if I just describe how commitments are cashed out in terms of Quine's like language?
Yeah, I mind.
Yeah, you mind? Yeah, you don't like that. Yeah, I hate it.
Yeah, you better not fucking do it. No, go ahead.
Yeah, you better not do it. No. Okay, so basically what Quine does is he'll like take like what we would call that entity. Let's say that entity is like X, and then we just apply some irreducible predicate to it. So we would say like the treeness predicate. So then we say like X is a tree, right? It's treeing, right? We would say that it has that certain like predicate. And specifically under Quine's view, we're not committed to like predicates having any like robust existence, because commitments to existence are merely just the cardinality of a domain, or just like the number of entities in some domain, right? So we would just count up the entities. So one of the primary views of like motivates Quine's view is what says it's called Quinean anomalism. So like when we say that like some entity has a property, right? We're not committed to that property existing, but it's rather just some austere description of that object under his view. Would this be the type of view that you would hold?
I don't know if that's the type of view I'd hold.
Okay. So do you commit to properties having any type of ontological like status?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, so you do hold to that view. So then I'm wondering, is this the case? Like, do you think like maybe it's so like exactly how do you cash out commitments to properties or predicates or anything like that?
So when you say commitments to properties and predicates, are you just saying to say something has property X? What I mean by that?
This is so the game was so crazy. I just got gained out.
Oh yeah, you got ear rape. I don't know why the fuck that keeps happening. I don't know how the fuck that happened. It keeps happening.
You already voice mogged me.
You've been voice.
No.
I've been hitting those heat from fire, fire from heat. So you weren't ready for the voice mob.
Heat from fire, fire from heat. Yeah, like that. No. But anyway, so like how exactly would you cash out commitments to properties? Because I don't think you because as far as we know, we don't quantify over those things. At least those quantifiers are dispensable. They're cashed out in terms of what objects already exist.
Yeah, when you say commitments to properties, like commitments there, what do you mean?
Like in order for statements about things having properties to be true, properties would have to exist.
Okay, yeah. So when I say, I mean, the way I'd cash out a commitment to a property in that sense would be that if X has property Y, if and only if it's the case, that X has certain true facts about it. So I would just hold to some fact-based or some like fact correspondence view, I guess.
Oh, but then you're not committed to properties exactly under the Quinean view. You're just committed to X having said property.
I would hold those to be property.
Or having a description of having a property.
I think that's just a rephrasing of what a property is.
Well, not necessarily, because what the Quinean would say is that when we say that properties exist, they only exist insofar as they're descriptions of particulars. They're not like they don't have any robust existence. Like we would say like there is like a redness property or trope that the thing.
Yeah, I think I'm just holding to the different semantics of what a property is than Quine would be.
Yeah. Well, then maybe under your view, would you still say that like at least like how would you view a property? Do you view like a property as like do you view like an abstract view as properties, or like what's exactly the view of properties you hold?
Yeah, I think that a property is some fact about a thing.
Just some fact about it. Well, yeah, that would be like the type of view that Quine holds. Like Quine would say that it's just some fact about the thing. But when you say like it's a fact about the thing, do you think there's any like particular thing that makes it true that it has that thing, or is it just the fact that it's that particular object that makes it true that it has that property?
Well, I would say that it's there's things about the thing with the property that are true, right? So there's like say we had like I don't know, like the property of redness or something. I would say that it's like some like Fourier transformation over like the wavelengths of light that it like emits or something like that.
Well, yeah, you can have like a variety of different views, like, but let's just say it's like the refractory surface of its object. Like that's usually the.
It's the albedo of the surface, not the refractory surface.
Well, that's usually what the non-reductive physicalists, or sorry, the reductive physicalists would say about light or about colors.
The refractive surface of the object.
Yep.
Well, that doesn't make any sense because it's not refraction causing colors. I mean, that's just like scientifically wrong. I don't know if that's like just a weird way they're using the terms there.
I think it might be
not the refraction.
But anyway,
refraction is like reflect. So in the same sense that reflection is when something bounces off, refraction is the movement through of an object. It warps the direction of the light ray.
So let's take this statement, right? Because we're getting off topic. Let's take this statement. Like, let's say that like this apple is red, and we'll say that my house is red. Do you agree that this apple is red in the same way that my house is red? Do you agree that statement's true?
Yeah, the way that I would use those words, yeah.
Okay, but if the redness property is just held in virtue of, that particular object being that kind of particular object, they wouldn't be true in the same way, because they would just be true, at least insofar, only insofar
in the same way, the way that I use same way.
What's the way that you use same way here?
Yeah, so when I say they're true in the same way, what I mean is that when I say the apple is red, what I'm saying is the apple is the type of thing that it has these this Fourier transformation of light waves, and I'm saying that the house has similar within the range Fourier transformations of light waves.
Okay, but then that seems like you are committed to some existence of like a property of redness existing. But then now I'm confused, like, if you're committed to the existence of the property, like that redness property existing, does this mean that, like, at least as far as you're understanding the quantifier view, is it not like a nominalistic understanding of that view? Because there are realist understandings of the quantifier view.
I mean, it depends on here in the taxonomy. I would think it's a nominalist view.
Well, if you're saying, look, they both have in common these sets of traits, and so when we say that the redness property applies to both of them, we're saying that there is something in common between them, right? You agree that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then that common thing that's between them is something that exists under your view. You're also committed to that existing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I assume like there's something to account for why they hold those two things in common. For you, it might be a physicalist understanding, but we could probably keep like asking questions backwards, right? Like why did
my thing about physicalism? So we'll just for the sake of like, yeah, my thing about.
Yeah, when I'm saying physicalist, just replace it with naturalist in your head.
Yeah, I would say yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But obviously, like, if you keep asking back, is it just... So, like, if you keep asking back, like, okay, well, why are these two Fourier transforms? Like, why is it the case that these two Fourier transforms have something in common? Right? And then,
it would be that they have... They're just going to be mathematical facts about the two transforms.
They're just going to be... Yeah. But wait, then what's making those mathematical facts true under your view?
It'd be analytically true.
Oh, they would just be analytically true by the definitions of the terms?
Yeah.
But then it's unclear how those analytic truths actually give rise to any like particular experiences of redness.
Well, I think it's a different question of how do we have experiences of redness, and how is it the case that these mathematical facts about redness are similar? So I would say that they're. Yeah, go.
What I'm specifically asking in terms of the red question between the apple and the house is like, what a thing explains why both of those entities belong to the common class of being red, and it seems like you're just saying either one of two things, right? Either you're saying that it's kind of root that they kind of belong to the common class of being red, or that they have the same predicate, like they have the same description of being red.
Yeah, I don't view those as distinct statements.
Well, no, because look, so the view that they have the same description, the fact they have the same description would be explaining why they're both red. But in the view that it's just brute, there is no, it's not the fact that there's a description, even though they may have a description that holds that they're both red. It's just that it's brute why they're both red. There's no explanation. Why they're both red. They're just
Oh yeah, I wouldn't say it's brute. That would be different.
Okay, so they would just hold the same predicate under your view of the redness predicate?
If I'm understanding you correctly, then yeah.
Then what's the explanation for why they hold that redness predicate between the two, right? So what's the explanation for why they both hold the redness predicate as opposed to another predicate? And obviously you're just going to identify the redness predicate with the Fourier transform, but I was asking, you know, what's the explanation for why they hold these two predicates?
Well, I mean, depending on where you're looking for the explanation at, I'd probably like the first thing I would do is start telling you things about the surface of the objects and the ways they like reflect light. Is there something else you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm obviously looking for something else, right? Because I'm also looking for, because obviously, you know, when you're saying, you know, what it means for them to be red is that they have these surfaces, or the fact that they reflect light. But I'm asking what makes it in common for them both to have these same surfaces, outside of just the austere kind of physical facts about them, right?
Well, I'm not sure it is anything other than the facts.
Might want to say like so in the same way that a realist might want to say like, why is it the case that both of these objects, you know, have mass, right? Or like an Armstrong type of realist might want to say like both of these objects have mass, or belong to the common class of things that have mass.
Well, because they're ontologically committed and at rest.
Well, then it just seems like, but it seems like in these cases you're just kind of saying, well, look, they like resemble each other just kind of by the fact that they do, and then I don't see any further explanation, which I don't know why you're not just taking the view that they're both brute.
Well, I'm not. It seems like it's just a very clear reason why it's the case, right? So the reason why things have mass is just explained by physics.
Well, yeah, but like what we're asking, when we're saying mass, I'm talking about mass in a bit more robust sense than just like the fact that they're like made of stuff, right? But I'm talking about mass as having like the property of having mass, right? Like the actual like kind of more robust metaphysical.
You mean like warp space-time, right? Like it's like the thing that
no, like they have the actual like not just in terms of like the austere physical descriptions they have, like the actual property they hold.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the distinction is between that and the other.
Well, in terms of like, look, we might say that things that have the property of having mass warp space-time, right? But at least in some interpretations of like universals, where I'm meaning something a little bit more than just the description it gives me about the natural facts. I'm saying that there is some property that explains why both of these things have mass, right, outside of just the description. Now, if you're just saying, well, mass is just kind of all the physical descriptions that we can give, right? Then I guess your view might be like compatible with some Quinian view, but now I'm just wondering why you didn't just take the earlier position which was that, you know, all these objects resemble each other just brutally.
Because I think that the idea that they resemble it. So you're asking, why didn't I just assume it was like a brute fact they resemble each other?
Yeah, like it seems like when you're just saying, look, they all have these same descriptions, I'm asking, well, what do they have these same descriptions in virtue of? And then you refer back to the description, right? But it seems like you're some way inclined to saying that the description is brute. There's no further explanation for why they have the description outside.
When you say the description's brute, there's no further explanation outside of the. Are you saying no further explanation outside of the physical facts about the thing or the natural facts about the thing?
Yeah, well, the description just is the physical facts or natural facts that you're describing, right?
Well, then there's explanations for those natural facts, right? So there's other natural factors. Yeah.
Yeah, there's obviously causal explanations, right? And there's
Yes.
there's causal and there's grounding explanation. There might even be some grounding explanation, but either you're gonna have to come to the point where the causal explanations bottom out in some root thing, right? Like the fact that like what characterizes mass is something that's just, you know, in virtue of what the fact it is to be, or just in virtue of it having a mass, right? Or you're gonna have to appeal to some set of universals, right? And the difference is, and I'll tell you the difference between the two views, right? Under the view where there's universals, I'm committed to some like actual like robust property existing, right? I'm committed to saying that, you know, objects that have mass, both have mass in virtue of both exemplifying the property of having mass. While in the brute view, they just both have mass, right? And there's no further explanation for why they have mass.
There's no further non-causal explanation?
Yeah, there's no further non-causal, unless you like, and then we could probably, and if there is like a non-causal explanation that's still naturalistic, where I'm gonna just go back down and ask why that, you know, where the non-causal explanation for that being the case.
Yeah, just to see exactly where those lines are. When you describe something as being an explanation, what are the check boxes there, the necessary sufficient conditions? Like what makes something an explanation?
What makes something an explanation?
Yeah.
In terms of the causal or non-causal sense?
The non-causal sense.
Okay, so the non-causal sense, there's probably a couple ways that I would describe explanations. I'm gonna I'll refer to, I'm not gonna refer to grounding because that's not really compatible with the Quinean view, or at least it's not typically understood to be compatible with the Quinean view. So I'll probably just refer to, I'll probably refer to like supervenience. So we would say something like, y is explained by some fact X if and only if the fact that y exists is predicted under the fact that y depends on X or something.
Okay,
like
so
that.
supervenient. So you would say that supervenience relations are explanations which could be non-causal, right?
Yeah,
which are non-causal.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I can give you a supervenience explanation. So I could say something like the thing being read supervenes onto facts about the surface of the thing.
Yeah, and then but then I want to ask further, like when you go like the facts on the surface of the thing, what's the further thing that supervenes on?
I would just so what I would give you after facts about the surface of the thing would be facts about the spatial relations of the molecules of it, and the more facts about the molecules of it.
And then you would just
keep going in natural direction.
Yeah, and then how far down are you going? Because I want to go to the bottom fact here.
Up until the point where the answer is I don't really know what that supervenes onto, so we'll call it quantum fields, right? I don't know what quantum fields supervene onto. They probably don't supervene onto something.
Okay, well then if you're saying, and then are you, at least in the Quinean view, are you saying that like these facts can just be paraphrased? Because at least I think you're taking, or at least in some way you take supervenience at least to be something that can be paraphrased, right? So like when I say something supervenes on something else, I can paraphrase y in terms of x, right?
No, I probably wouldn't say that. Because I would say that something can supervene onto something else without it being the thing that's being invoked when the term is used.
Okay. Wait.
Yeah,
so
I would say that these.
So do you so you hold like they're like strongly supervenient or something? Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. But if that's the case, right? If you're holding that they're strongly supervenient, then it seems like you I don't wait, why would you hold that they're strongly supervenient in the case of like molecules and stuff, like they can't be reduced?
So I don't think it's the case that the molecules can't be reduced to some further fact. I think if you go into quantum fields, I think that at that point I just don't know what it supervenes onto, but it may very well supervene onto something. Maybe it is brute. Maybe it supervenes onto something else. But the reason why you said that I must hold to it, right, was because of the fact that I was rejecting that they are term substitutable that you can paraphrase for it. I would say that the issue I have there is that I think you definitely can't paraphrase for some things. Like I don't think that when I'm talking, I'm thinking anything about quantum fields. I think there's a fact out there in the world is that all those things supervene onto quantum fields. I don't think what I'm invoking is the quantum field.
So when you say it has a property, right? Let's say it has the property of redness, and you're saying, okay, well, it's explained by the virtue of the redness being like supervenient on these QFT facts, right? These quantum field facts, right? Now, if the quantum field facts were different, I assume you also think like the redness facts would be different, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I can imagine different ways the quantum field facts could be such that the red facts were different, but I don't think them being different is enough to invoke a difference in the red facts.
There would be a way that they could be different. They depend, right, on they all causally depend on the QFT facts.
Yeah.
Well, if that way, then it seems like I'm a little confused here, right? Because you said earlier that they're not term substitutable, and you're saying, okay, well, the reason I have robust commitment to these things is in virtue of the robust commitments in terms. Wait. Now I have a better question. Than doing that, right? So when you say that the objects being read is explained in virtue of these Fourier transforms or whatever, right? Do you think that you could paraphrase the redness property in virtue of that characteristic the object has?
No, I don't think that's what people are saying about it. I think that's what makes it red.
Oh, you think that's what makes it red?
Yeah, that's what causes your eyes to interpret it as red, then it gets your brain to categorize it that.
Okay. Wait, so you think there's like a strong difference between my experience of red, like my Quayle-like experience of red, and the actual like characteristic the object has?
There is a difference. There's a difference in the sense that when you're having the first-hand experience of red, you're receiving a several steps down consequence of the thing actually being red.
Why can't I just say that I'm just like learning about the redness in like two different ways? In the scientific sense, I'm learning about it through all these naturalistic processes, and in like the phenomenal sense, I'm learning about it non-inferentially.
No, you certainly could. I don't think there's any issue with saying that.
Okay, well then it seems like they would be term substitutable under this sense.
No, I don't think they'd be term substitutable. I think that if you're learning about redness scientifically, you're learning all of these things about what causes the experience of redness. But when you talk about something being red out there in the world, you can discover the reasons why it's red.
Oh.
But that's not the same as what it is that is red. But what I was talking about was specifically the object being red. Yeah.
If the object being red, then it would be term substitutable if you're just saying it's the object being red out in the world.
I think that the Fourier transformation is term substitutable for it being red in the world. I don't think that the things which that Fourier transformation supervenes onto are term substitutable.
Okay, but what I'm talking about is the object being red. Now, obviously, you might think there's a difference between my experience of the object, but I was just talking about the object being red because out there in the world, right? The actual object being red. We could use a different property if you would wish, but
I think
then it would seem like the reason why, what makes it true that the object is red, right, is just the fact that it's that kind of object that has this property, right? And not in virtue of anything else, like the fact. Sorry, so that has that kind of object that has this irreducible set of descriptions.
No, I think it's a category of objects. So there's a huge number of objects that will produce the same range of spectrographs based on. There's a huge number of objects that produce the same range of spectrographs, and that's due to the fact that there are different surface properties of these objects. Some will bring about that. Some cases that spectrograph is brought about through the fact that there is it could be the case that there's like a really, really small surface texture or something that causes it so that only lower wavelengths of light end up being emitted off of it, like we see this in certain beetles, for example. And in another case, it may be the case that it's just that the light is absorbed more at certain. The light's absorbed more if it is really green, and it bounces more if it's very reddish light, right? So just light in those wavelengths get bounced off more. That would be another reason. Right, another thing that's that Fourier transformation could be caused by. So there are different things that occur in different scenarios. However, when I say that object is red, a really nerdy way that you could paraphrase that. Here's one paraphrasing: is the Fourier transformation, is the range of Fourier transformations. I'm saying